Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah ala ni'matul islami wa kafa biha ni'ma. All praise and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his blessing of Islam, which suffices as a blessing. We are at the 18th para, half of that we've completed. Inshallah, we'll complete it today. Today we're going to do Surah Nur. That's where we will begin. And this is a Madni Surah. And you will see that in Surah Nur there are lots of family laws. There are some severe punishments that have also been stated over here, enacted in this. But those punishments are there to protect the system. They work more as a deterrent than anything else. But you'll see the emphasis in Surah Nur is going to be on haya, on modesty, and it says that immodesty and shamelessness will lead on to zina and adultery and fornication, which actually ends up destroying the peace of home and the peace of the society. And it has a huge impact on future generations. So lots of ayahs that we begin with on this subject. So let's begin. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Suratun anzalnaha wa faradnaha wa anzalna fiha ayatin bayyinatin la'allakum tadhakkarun. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, a surah we have sent down and made obligatory. So just look at this first word, that this is not an option. This is a farz that has been there. A surah that we have sent down and made obligatory, and sent down in it clear signs so that you may receive the advice. Now, no surah begins like Surah Nur. It's a unique surah. It's a very decisive and a very determined style. It's not just like an ordinary kalam of encouraging people or asking them to do something. As Quran says over here, this is a farz on us. It has been made farz. We have no option, no choice. So when you hear the commandments that are going to come after this, remember that these are farz. These are not optional commandments. The fornicating women and the fornicating man, flog each of them 100 stripes, and let not pity for them stop you in the matter of Allah's religion, if you really believe in Allah and the last day. And a group of believers must witness their punishment. Now this is this act of fornication that's being stated over here. This is with mutual consent, which is what we call adultery. But the punishment is, as we will see later on, if four people have witnessed, and they must be the eyewitness. So to fulfill it is an extremely difficult thing. And this punishment is equal both for unmarried and married. But for the married, we have a far more severe punishment that would come, that we will see from the hadith. Az-zani la yankihu illa zaniyatan aw mushrikatan wa zaniyatu la yankihuha illa zanin aw mushrik. And a man who fornicates does not marry but a woman who fornicates or idolater. And a woman who fornicates does not marry a man who fornicates or idolater. And this is being prohibited for the believers. Now, zina is adultery is one of the highest degree of moral corruption, as we all understand and know. And the position of this is like the position of shirk. Shirk is the highest degree of corruption in faith, and so is adultery in terms of moral. Now, obviously, exception is of someone who has done this in the past and asked Allah for forgiveness, and if that's a true asking for forgiveness, then Allah does forgive. But what this ayat states over here is that a fornicating man does not marry but a woman who's also a fornicator or an idolater, because these birds of feather, as in English this goes on, they always flock together. So birds of feather, they flock together. Hence, before nikah, one of the things that we really need to be very careful is to check the moral character of the opposite. Sometimes people focus more on beauty, on wealth, on status, on job, but one of the things that they really need to see is the moral character. Now, obviously, having said that, although also keep in mind that nikah, if it is performed between the two, then it remains valid. The idea is that the believers should really abstain from contracting such marriages. And this offense is so terrible that, as you can see over here, that it doesn't matter whether one is a Muslim or not, because it says it's the same thing as a fornicator and an idolater. They are combined together. So one actually goes out of the folds of Islam, and it's almost like marrying a mushrik. Those who accuse the chaste, which means women of fornication, which means chaste women, but Do not produce 4 witnesses, flog them with 80 stripes, and do not accept their evidence anymore. They are the transgressors. Now, the punishment of charge of adultery without 4 witnesses, or even making this kind of a suggestion without any evidence, has very, very serious consequences, because then it's an 80 stripes that have to be flogged on them. So produce 4 witnesses. So what you can see, the mizaj of Islam over here is that propagating of evil itself is an evil, because it gives rise to serious sins in the society. Except those who repent afterwards and mend their way, then Allah is all forgiving and merciful. Those who accuse their wives of adultery while they have no witness except their own selves, then the evidence of one of them would be to swear 4 oaths by Allah that he is most surely of the truthful one. So this is an accusation of adultery by an husband against his wife. Now obviously in such situation there is only one witness, other witnesses will not be present, and that's the only witness needed, which is the husband or the wife. Vice versa is also true. The 5th oath, that Allah curse is on him if he is one of the liars. And it will avert the punishment from her if she testifies 4 times, bearing by Allah to witness that he is most surely a liar. And the 5th oath, that Allah's wrath is upon her if he is one of the truthful. So if such a state is reached that there is a difference, and the man or the husband is accusing the wife and she is denying, and she also takes the oath on this, that this is a false charge on him, then the marriage actually gets dissolved. And these are the principles that are laid down in what is called a li'an. Had it not been for the grace of Allah upon you and his mercy, that Allah is most relenting, all wise. Those who have fabricated the lie are the gangs among you. Do not think it is bad for you, rather it is good for you. Every one of them is liable for what he earned of the sin. And the one who played the major role in it, for him there is a mighty punishment. This is all about ikf, which is a false charge being put on some woman. So this is referring to the plot by the hypocrites, and obviously some true believers also became a party to this, and it created such a sad situation in Medina. What Quran says over here is, yes, obviously this was you think that this fabricated charge was bad for you, but actually it is good for you. So don't think that this shar is just a shar. There is a khair inside it also. And what was the khair over here? The khair over here was that the enemy of Islam were completely identified. And the simple Muslims, they began to realize how dangerous this game of the hypocrites was. But I think what also we need to understand is that whenever we are faced with any calamity, be sure that in every calamity there is a khair for people. Why did not the believer, men and women, when they heard it, think well of their own people and say, this is an obvious invented lie? So what Quran is teaching us is that if someone is known to us, we know their character, and we hear an allegation, we must weigh their life, we must weigh the character of the person on one side and the allegations on the other side before we actually reach to a conclusion. Now here the case that's being referred to is the allegation against no ordinary person. This was an allegation against the wife of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this was the mother of the Ummah, the Ummul Mu'mineen, which is Hazrat Aisha radhiyallahu anha. So it is important that what Quran is telling is that people should not remain quiet, but they must defend the character and ask the person who's making this charge to actually bring in 4 witnesses. What Quran is also instructing us is, don't take part in such a hearing of such slander. Why did they not bring 4 witnesses to prove this? Since they did not bring any witness, they are the liars in the sight of Allah. So you see over here is that when this charge is levied against, or somebody says this against any woman, then it becomes a lazim, it becomes compulsory for them to produce 4 witnesses. Otherwise they are termed as liars in the sight of Allah. Had it not been the grace of Allah upon you and his mercy in this world and in the hereafter, a severe punishment would have reached you for what you indulged in. When you received it with your tongues, and were saying with your mouth something of which you had no knowledge, and taking it as a trivial matter, while in the sight of Allah it was a grave matter. Sometimes people just talk about women in a very casual way. Your tongues are picking up from each other like a rally race where people race to reach first. And people are racing over here with this news of scandal. People love sensation. And this is, this afwah and this rumor is such a grave matter. You know, the reason why it's such a grave matter is because other people who hear this, they start to feel self-righteous. Oh, how righteous we are. They have this feeling, oh, we don't do this, we are so self-righteous. Or what it does is that it makes the sin acceptable. People begin to think, oh, if everyone is doing it, so what? I mean, there's no problem. And if such and such is doing it, then it shouldn't be such a grave thing. And that's the reason why Quran is so strong that these things should not be discussed at all in public. And why, when you heard of it, did you not say, it is not for us to speak about this. Glory be to you. This is a great splendor. Now, this should be our instant reaction, that our tongues should refuse to say such words. Now, if there is a mudslinging session going on, I think, and we are in a company of people who are talking about women, instinctively we must defend these women. We must stop this discussion. Allah admonishes you never to repeat something like this if you are believers. Allah makes the signs clear to you, and Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. Surely those who love that immorality spreads among the believers, for them there is a painful punishment in this world and the hereafter. Allah knows and you do not know. Now you see that when sin and immorality and indecency is published and glorified, then the consequences of that are extremely serious, because immorality begins to spread among the believers. Had it not been for the grace of Allah upon you and His mercy, and that Allah is very kind, very merciful. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattabi'u khutuwati shaitan wa man yattabi'u khutuwati shaitani fa innahu ya'muru bil fahsha'i wal munkar. And O you who believe, do not follow the footsteps of the shaitan, and whoever follows the footsteps of the shaitan, he, which means the shaitan, orders one to commit shameful acts and evil deeds. Had it not been for the grace of Allah upon you and His mercy, not a single person from you would have ever attained purity. But Allah purifies whomsoever He wills, and Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. Now this ayah, actually, ayah 21, sums up the entire last ruku, the whole ruku that we have read over here. The first assault of shaitan is in form of waswasa, in form of insinuation. He suggests. He cannot force people. He cannot force man and women to do anything. He cannot compel people. He only makes suggestions. He only gives ideas in their mind. Now when we start to have poor thoughts, when we start to have these bure khayal about someone, know that shaitan is lurking around. And you know, that's something you must recognize, that shaitan is actually just instigating you. You know, these unconscious ideas about perfectly good people, they come into our mind. Sometimes it's not really in our control, and sometimes we fret about other people. We try to second guess them. But for waswasa, we are not held accountable. If such bad thought come, we are not held accountable for that. Allah is not saying don't let waswasa come to you. But if you have these ill ideas, don't follow these ill ideas. So when you have bad thoughts and ideas about someone, don't become inquisitive. Don't begin to probe. Don't begin to discuss with others. Just say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You know, seek refuge in Allah from the shaitan. Those of you who possess grace and wealth among you should not swear against giving their charitable gifts to the relatives and the poor, to those who have migrated in the way of Allah, and they should forgive and forgo. Do you not like that Allah forgives you? Allah is most forgiving and very merciful. So here Allah is asking Muslims to be magnanimous, to be generous, that they should not punish their poor relatives on account of the mistakes or error. And this is also referring to some of the relatives of Hazrat Abu Bakr Radhiyallahu Anhu, who also took part in this slender, and he made a promise that he will not support them anymore. So this ayat came in over here. Now what this ayat is telling us is everyone commits a mistake. Man is weak, so don't ignore the goodness of these people. If you expect mercy from Allah, be merciful to others. Don't ignore them and the people because of their past mistakes. Surely those who level a false charge against chaste, naive, believing women are cursed in this world and hereafter, and for them is a mighty punishment. The words that are used over here, muhsanatin, ghafilatin, meaning believing, pure, innocent women, and these are actually describing the qualities of whom? against whom this slander was there, which was Hazrat Aisha Radhiyallahu anha. So she is being described in this ayat 23 over here. And she was actually unaware of the slander circulating in Medina. She didn't even know that this is what people are talking about. Our Prophet ﷺ said, accusing a pure woman of adultery is enough to destroy the good deeds of 100 years. None of us probably will lead up to a life of 100 years. But against one pure woman, if of a charge of adultery, people accuse someone, this is 100 years good deeds being destroyed. And our Prophet ﷺ said this is a major sin. So I think extremely important for us is don't even think of commenting on any women, no matter who she may be. Do not think of passing any judgment unless you have 4 witnesses. On the day when their tongues and their hands and their feet will testify against themselves of what they used to do. Now, lying is such a habit that even on day of judgment, liars will say that we didn't do this. The angels wrongly recorded our deeds. And then Allah will actually command their hands and their feet and their tongues to speak, and the tongues will give evidence and the hands will give evidence, and so will the feet. Now today these hand and our feet and our eyes and our tongues are under our own control. They are under our command. They do what we tell them to do. But remember and keep in mind, actually they are actually recording whatever we are asking them to do. So be very careful, because they may be called on the day of judgment as a witness. On that day, Allah will give them their rightful recompense in full, and they will know that Allah, He is the manifest truth. Impure women are for impure men, and vile men are for vile women, and pure women are for pure men, and pure men are for pure women. They are absorbed of what people say, and for them is forgiveness and grace and provisions. So birds of feather flock together for clapping. 2 hands are needed, right? Similarly, immoral men will only be immoral if there are immoral women there, right? Otherwise, you can't clap with 1 hand. And the same is true for opposite. Strong corrected men will always desire decent and strong corrected women. And this is where happiness actually comes between couples. Happiness comes in from compatibility, from like-mindedness, from the same wavelength. O you who believe, do not enter any houses other than your own unless you seek permission and greet their inmates with salam. That is good for you, so that you may be heedful. Now we begin here by reforming homes, which is the basic unit of a society. Now here in this ayah, the adab and decorum of going to somebody else's house is being described over here. That if you want to visit someone, first call them. First ask them, take their permission, and then when you are on the door, when you are in their house, next do salam, so that they hear that you have arrived. And if you do not find anyone in it, then do not enter therein until permission is given to you. If it is said to you, go back, just go back. It is more decent for you. Allah is all aware of what you do. There is no sin on you if you enter unoccupied houses in which you have rightful benefit. Allah knows what you reveal and what you conceal. This is the balance of Quran and the balance of Islam, that this restriction is not for commercial buildings or publics or public places or stores where people can enter without actually first taking permission. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ, and tell believing men that they must lower their gaze and guard their modesty. It is more decent for them. Surely Allah is all aware of what they do. So now we see the instructions being given over here to protect izzat, the individual responsibility being assigned over here. And first, who is being addressed? First, men are being addressed. This is their responsibility, because the society will not become better only if women begin to wear hijab. It will not be good. If men remain bad nazar and they have poor moral, you can hardly expect any change to come in a society. Immorality begins with eyes and ends up with adultery. Like Hazrat Isa alayhi salam said, looking at a woman with lust is also adultery. So it is looking in a particular way which is being stopped. No one says don't look at women. One who looks knows very well in the way in which he is looking. And tell believing women that they must lower their gazes and guard their modesty, and must not expose their adornment except that which appears thereof, and must wrap their stoles over their bosoms, and must not expose their adornment except to their husbands or their fathers, or their fathers of their husband, or their sons, or the sons of their husbands, or to their brothers, or the sons of their brothers, or the sons of their sisters, or to their women, or to those owned by their right hand, or male attendants having no physical urge, or to children who are not yet conscious of the hidden matters of women, and let them not stamp their feet in a way that adornment they conceal is known. And repent to Allah, O believers, all of you, so that you may achieve success. Now, this is a long ayat. Obviously, it also has two parts to it. The first part of it describes that men and women are different, and we all know that. Physically, we are very different. Our structures are very different. Women have zinat; they are far more beautiful, which is really a nemat. To be honest, it's a nemat for them. But with every nemat, the responsibility also increases. So greater responsibility on them, and because men are not that beautiful, so they are not actually being given these instructions, so they are not being commanded to cover their zinat. Now, what is zinat? Well, zinat is on the face, because it's the face that is beautiful, the hair, the figure, parts of body on which beautification is done. Now, what Quran is telling us over here is that they must wrap their stoles over them, and this is the word that is used over here is khamar. Khamar is a thing which actually hides or covers something else. Now, intoxicants is also called khamar. Wine and intoxicants is also khamar, because they cover our mind. Now, in Arabic or in Arabs, khimar was a cloth that women used to cover their head and their hair. It was kind of a long scarf. That's the reason why it's not said put a khimar on your hair on head, because everyone knew that khimar is supposed to cover your head. Like when I say, let's put on your socks. I don't have to tell you put on your socks on your feet, because I know that you're not going to put the sock on your head. And that's the reason khimar, the word, is being used over here, is because this was traditionally how women used to cover their head and their hair with a long scarf. So they would, what these Arab women would do is that they would cover their hair and head with this khimar, but they would throw it back, behind them, exposing their neck and their face and their front. So what is being said over here is that instead of putting your khimar at the back, you put it in the front. Hence, the purpose is to hide the zinat. And then the list of people are given in front of whom women can come with zinat after they've done zinat, and there's a long list that's being stated. And marry those among you who are single and are capable from among your female and male slaves. If they are poor, Allah will enrich them out of His grace, and Allah is all-encompassing, all-knowing. So Islam encourages its followers to get married as soon as possible, as soon as convenient, as soon as practical, makes nikah very simple, make nikah much easy, and then Allah says Allah will give barakat in such marriages. And those who cannot afford marriage should keep themselves chaste until Allah enriches them out of His grace. And those of your slaves who wish to enter the contract of liberation, give them the contract if you recognize some good in them, and give them out of the wealth of Allah He has given to you. And do not compel your slave girls to prostitution if they wish to observe chastity, in order that you may seek temporary benefit of the worldly life. If one compels them, then surely Allah is most forgiving, very merciful for those women who are forced. So those who just cannot marry, then they must live with the purity of mind and purity of thought, and that's the sum up of this ayah. Indeed, we have sent down to you enlightening verses and exemplary description of those who passed away before you, at good counsel for the God-fearing. So referring to all the hikam which have been highlighted up till now, this is a nasiyah, this is an admonition, and it will only benefit those people who fear Allah. Now the next ayat is which is you call the ayat Nur, which is on which this whole surah is also being named. Allahu nurus samawati wal ard, masulu nurihi ka mishkatin fiha misbah, al misbah fi zujaja, az-zujajatu ka'annaha kawkabun durriyun yuqadu min shajaratin mubarakatin zaytunatin la sharqiyatin wala gharbiyya yakadu zaytuha yudhi'u lam tamsashu nar nurun ala nur yahdillahu bi nurihi man yasha wa yadribullahu al-amsala lin-nasi wallahu bikulli shay'in alim. And Allah is the light, or Allah is the nur of the heavens and the earth, and the parable of His light is that a niche in which there is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass looks like a brilliant star. It is lit by the oil of the blessed olive tree, which is neither eastern nor western. The oil almost glows forth, even though fire has not touched it. Light upon light, or nur upon nur, Allah guides to His light whom He wills, and Allah sets parable for the people, and Allah knows all things. So this ayat-nur, more than anything, more than explaining this ayat, I think this ayat has to be felt. We have to experience this ayat. Firstly, because there is no possibility of us defining Allah through light or through nur or through this lamp or the glass that's being stated over here, because Allah cannot be described by metaphors or even by examples. So here the parable of light of Allah is not meant to express any reality. This is not really a reality, because Quran says laisa kamithlihi shay'un, there is nothing like Him. It refers to the illumination of those who are willing and ready to be guided. So it's a parable of Allah's light in the heart of those who are seeking the truth. Now obviously we are conscious of the created light, this created light that's all around us, the sun and the moon, as well as the light that we have in our homes. And this light is there, it guides us to our worldly destination. This light guides us. How do we get guided to the unseen world? A world which is beyond our senses, which is beyond what our senses can perceive. So the guidance is only through Allah. And all matters all matters of faith, this light, when it enters into our hearts, we are actually truly guided to the unseen world. This lamp is in the houses that Allah has permitted to be raised, and where His name is remembered and His purity is pronounced in the morning and in the evening. Now, even in lifeless houses and homes of brick and mortars, they become blessed where Allah's name is remembered. So you can think about the heart which remembers Allah. Any place, any house, any masjid where Allah's name is exalted, that automatically gets glorified. By the men whom no trade or sale makes neglectful of remembrance of Allah, nor for establishing salah and paying zakah, they are fearful of a day in which the hearts and eyes will be overturned. So while trade and business is the need, but people should not be over involved to neglect prayer and to give zakat. The faith of such people is that Allah will reward them according to the best of their deeds and give them more out of His grace. Allah gives whom He wills without a measure. As for those who disbelieve, their deeds are like a mirage in a desert, which a thirsty person deems to be water, until when he comes to it, he finds nothing and finds Allah with him. So he pays him his full account, or he pays him his account in full, and Allah is swift in reckoning. So this is the example of those people being given over here. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بَقِيَةٍ يَحْسَبُهُ الزَّمَانُ مَاءً. Okay, this is the example of someone for whom the entire effort is this worldly life. They keep making one target after another, believing that they will be happy when this target is met. And this Quran says this is like someone in a desert who is searching for water, and he sees this water just in front of him. Imagine someone walking in a hot desert and he sees, there's a mirage, and then he runs to that, he finds nothing, and then he sees that this is just like slightly ahead of him, and he goes to that mirage. Still he finds no water, only disillusionment, only disappointment, until he finds Allah who takes account of him. Or their deeds are like the layers of darkness in a vast deep ocean, overwhelmed by a wave, above which there is another wave, above which there are clouds, utter darknesses, one above another. When one puts forth his hand, he can hardly see it, and the one to whom Allah does not give light will have no light, can have no light. So the example of someone who is living in utter darkness, he has no inclination, no desire even to be guided. He is also surrounded, and the surroundings are also dark. The surroundings are too dark. The world in darkness, away from guidance, to the darkness of the grave, which is another darkness, and then to the darkness of the hereafter, being distanced from the nur of Allah. Did you not realize that purity of Allah is proclaimed by all those in the heavens and the earth, and by the birds in the flight with wings outstretched? Each knows its own prayers and its glorification, and Allah knows well what they do. To Allah belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and towards Allah is the final return. Do you not realize that Allah drives the clouds, then joins them, then piles them up? Then you see the rain coming out of their midst. He sends down from the sky mountains of clouds having hail in them. Then He afflicts with it whomsoever He wills, and turns it away from whomsoever He wills. The flash of its lightning seems to snatch away their eyes. Now, Quran actually gives this long description, often in Quran, of the miracle of this water cycle, of how Allah drives a cloud and how those clouds give rain to where they give rain and then mist the land, some of the lands, and then this whole phenomena of the thunder and lightning. Allah alternates the night and the day. Surely in that there is a lesson for those who have sight. This night and day example being given over here, there is a time for day and there is a time for night. There are good times in our lives, and there will always be good times in our life, and then there will be also dark nights and dark days. Things change. This too shall end. Whatever state we are in, that state will end. Allah has created every moving creature from water. There are some that creep on their bellies, and some that walk on two legs, and of some is that which walks on all fours. Allah creates what He wills. Surely Allah has power over all things. We have surely sent down enlightening verses, and Allah guides whom He wills to the straight path. They say, we have believed in Allah and His Messenger, and we obey. Then a group of them goes back after all this. Those are no believers. So Allah is not just saying, that you can just say with your tongue. Islam is not just saying with our tongue. It is really unconditional surrender to the commandment of Allah, and that's what is being stated over here. When they are summoned to Allah and His Messenger, and He, which is the Messenger, may judge between them, in no time a group of them turns averse. And if the right is theirs, they would come to you as if they were submissive ones. Is there a disease in their hearts, or do they have doubts, or do they fear that Allah and His Messenger will do injustice to them? They themselves are the unjust. So entire sickness of these people is described in one word. They claim to be Muslims, but they are not really acting. They are not acting like one. Because of what? Because of shak, because of doubt. They have doubt on Allah. They have a doubt on Day of Judgment. They have a doubt on the Prophet. They have a doubt on the teachings of Quran. Surely, the response of the believers when they are summoned to Allah and His Messenger, so that He, which means the Messenger, may judge between them, is that they say, we listen and obey. This is the correct behavior. Such are successful people. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger and is in awe of Allah and is conscious of Him, then such people are the victorious. And they, which means the hypocrites, swear by Allah their strongest oaths. If you, which means addressing to the Prophet, if you, O Prophet, commands them, they will certainly go forth. Say, do not make promises. Obedience is known. Allah knows, and indeed Allah knows fully well of what you do. Say, obey Allah and obey His Messenger. But if you turn away, then He is only responsible for the duty placed on Him. And on you lies the responsibility of what you are burdened with. And if you obey Him, you will get the right path. The duty of the Messenger is no more than to convey the message clearly. So ayat after ayat, you'll see so much emphasis on obedience of the Prophet. Obey Allah, obey the Messenger. If you want the true path, follow the path of the Messenger. If you obey him, you will get the right path. So you can see, without obedience of the Messenger, there is no obedience of Allah. This is the only way we can be obedient to Allah, is by first being obedient to the Messenger. Allah has promised those of you who believe and do good deeds that He will certainly make them rulers in the land, as He has made those before them, and will certainly establish for them their religion He has chosen for them, and will certainly give them peace in place of fear in which they were before. They shall worship me. Describe no partner to me, and those who reject after this, they are the transgressors. I think this ayat defines over here is that this is a promise of Allah that He will establish us, He will establish their religion, what He has chosen for us. He will replace fear in our lives with with peace, and the condition that's being put over here is they shall worship me. There should be no shirk. We should be having full trust on Allah. Ascribe no partner to Him. Establish salah and pay zakah and obey the messenger so that you may be favored with mercy. Never think that disbelievers are able to frustrate Allah's plans on the earth. Their abode is fire, and indeed it is an evil place to return. Now this fitna have always risen, always been there. Fitnas have always risen and always died down. Whenever Muslims have been defeated, it's not due to the strength of the opposition, but it's always because of their internal weaknesses. O you who believe, the slaves owned by you and those of you who have not yet reached puberty must seek your permission to see you at 3 times of the day. Before the prayers of Fajr, when you take off your clothes at noon, and the prayer of Isha. These are 3 times of privacy for you. Outside these times, there is no wrong, neither to you nor to them, when some of you go around visiting each other. This is how Allah explains the verses to you, and Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. So these are the etiquettes being described over here, the etiquettes of privacy, especially at 3 times before the Fajr prayer, in the afternoon time when people are taking a rest or nap, and then after Isha prayers. These are the etiquettes of privacy. When the children from among you reach puberty, they must seek permission, as permission is sought by those before them. This is how Allah explains His verses to you, and Allah is all-knowing and all-wise. And those old women who have no hope for marriage, there is no sin on them if they take off their extra clothes, provided they do not display their adornment. And if they restrain themselves, it is better for them, and Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. There is no blame on a blind, nor there is a blame on the lame one, nor is there a blame on the sick person, nor on yourselves. In what you eat from your own homes, or from the homes of your father, or the homes of your mother, or the homes of your brothers, or the homes of your sisters, or the homes of your paternal uncle, or the homes of your paternal aunts, or the homes of your maternal uncles, or the homes of your maternal aunts, or from the places the keys of which you have under your control, or from the homes of your friends. There is no sin on you if you eat together or separately. So when you enter homes, greet one another with salam, a greeting prescribed by Allah, which is blessed and pure. This is how Allah explains the verses to you so that you may understand. So long ayat which is actually giving a calm of permitting people to eat wherever they want to eat, as long as they follow certain etiquettes that entering into the homes they must greet with salam, and these are the etiquettes of eating at different places. The believers are only one who believe in Allah and His Messenger, and who, when they are with Him on matters requiring collective action, they do not leave unless they seek permission. Surely those who seek permission are the ones who believe in Allah and His Messenger. So if they seek permission from you for some business of theirs, give them permission to whom you wish from among them, and pray to Allah for their forgiveness. Surely Allah is most forgiving, most very merciful. So when responsibility is taken, when people become part of a group, they must fulfill their commitment. So when you have a team, commitment is, only with commitment the objectives will be achieved. We cannot be part of a team and then have our own will and our own freedom. Do you consider the call of a messenger equal to your calling one another? Allah definitely knows those of you who sneak out, hiding themselves under the cover of others. So those who violate His command must beware, lest a trial afflicts them, or a punishment, or a painful punishment befalls them. So the special position of messenger being stated over here, that he is not ordinary, he is not just like you. You cannot actually call him like you call one another. So the last ayat of Surah Nur, Ala inna lillahi ma fis samawati wal ard, qad yalu ma antum alayh. Remember, to Allah belongs all that there is in the heavens and in the earth. He knows the condition in which you are present and the day on which they will be returned to Him. He will tell them what they did. Allah is fully aware of everything. What this ayat says over here is, at the end of the day, the owner of everything is Allah. We are just holding everything in trust for a short period of time. And He knows our condition, of what condition we are going to return. None can really run away from the accountability. Now, let's move on. We still have a few minutes to Surah Furqan. We're going to do a few ayahs of Surah Furqan, and this is a Makkan surah. And this ayat begins, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Tabarakallazi nazzala al-furqana ala abdihi liyakuna lil alamina nazira. Blessed is the one who sent down the criterion. So the word Furqan used over here, criterion, which actually is describes what is right and wrong. Blessed is the one who sent down the criterion upon his servant, so that he may be a warner to all the worlds. Now the first word that is used over here, tabaraka, barakat, and blessed. Anything and everything done with the name of the Creator and for His pleasure will be barakat. That will have barakat. All treasures of barakat are in the hands of Allah, the one to whom belongs the kingdom of heavens and earth, and who did not have a son, nor is there any partner to Him in the kingdom, and who has created everything and designed it in perfect measure. Yet they have adopted other gods besides Him, who do not create anything as they themselves are created, and they possess no power to cause harm or benefit even to themselves, nor do they have any control over death or life or resurrection. Now this is an expression of surprise and regret for those people who expect from the powerless, from either people or from deities or from anything. If people expect anything, Quran expresses great surprise and regrets that these are powerless, these are all created things. Anything that is created, you cannot really expect anything, any harm or any benefit to come from them, because they cannot actually give themselves any benefit. The disbelievers say, this is nothing but a lie he has fabricated, and some people have helped him with it. Thus they came upon with sheer injustice and falsehood. And they said, the tales of the ancient, he, which means the messenger, has got them written, and they are read out to him in the morning and evening. This is again an accusation that somebody is teaching our Prophet ﷺ, all these ayahs and all that he's saying is being revealed. Say, it is sent down by the one who knows the secrets in the heavens and the earth. Indeed, he is the most forgiving, the most merciful. They say, what sort of a messenger is this who eats food and walks in the market? Why is it that an angel has not been sent down with him? Who would have been a warner along with him? Now, quite honestly, if an angel had come, people would have said, we can't follow an angel because we are humans and this is an angel. And if you don't want to believe or you don't want to follow, you will have 20 excuses for that. Or a treasure should be thrown down to him, or he should have a garden to eat from it. And the transgressor said, you are following none but a bewitched man. See how they coin similes for you, so they have gone astray and cannot find a way. Glorious is the one who, if he so wills, would give you better than this, gardens beneath which rivers flow, and would give you palaces. So giving the best of everything, it's in the hands of Allah. If He pleases, nothing is difficult for Him. And like He gives to His righteous servants, like Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam and Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam, He also gives to the transgressors. He gave to the transgressors like Pharaoh and Qarun. So this is not really a test whether He loves or He does not love. But they have disbelieved the hour. For those who disbelieve the hours, we have prepared a flaming fire. When it will see them from a distance, which means as if this hellfire will see people. When it will see them from a distance, they will hear the sound of it in its raging and breathing. And when they will be thrown into a narrow place therein, while they will be chained together, they will call for death. Then it will be said to them, do not call for one death today, but call for many deaths. Say, is that better? Or the eternal paradise the God-fearing are promised? It will be their reward and the journey's end. For them there will be whatever they wish, while they will be eternal. This is a promise undertaken by your Lord, the fulfillment of which is worth praying for. Remember the day when He will gather them and what they used to worship besides Allah, and will say, did you mislead these, my servants, or did they themselves lose the way? They will say, glory be to you. It is not appropriate for us to take other guardians besides you, but you gave them and their fathers worldly benefit till they forgot the advice and became a ruined people. Thus they will refute you in what you say, and you will not be able to repulse, which means repulse the punishment, or to receive help. Whoever commits injustice from among you, we will make him taste a painful punishment. So the last ayat of this evening, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا قَبْلَكَ مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ إِلَّا إِنَّهُمْ لَيَأْكُلُونَ الطَّعَامَ وَيَمْشُونَ فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ. And we did not send any messenger before you, but all of them used to eat food and walk in the markets. And we have made some of you a trial for the other. Would you observe patience? And your Lord is ever seeing. People are in trial. You know, this first part of this ayat talks about the messengers, that they are human beings like you, they eat food, they walk in the market. And then Quran says, and we have made some of you a trial for the other. People are a trial for each other. The prophets are a trial for the kuffar. People who hate Islam, people who hate righteousness, they are spiteful. They are a trial for the believers. And Quran says there will be trials for you all over the place. So be patient. Be patient in every trial. So barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim wa nafana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikr al-hakim.